Welcome back to Pokemon episode summaries. Today, I'll be doing episode 319, Let Bagons Be Bagons. The episode begins with Ash and the gang continuing on their way to Fall Arbor Town, now walking through a mountainous pass, almost falling because the mountainous pass was so steep. Suddenly, a few small rocks crash down in front of them, leading Ash and the gang to look up to where the rocks came from to see a Bagon standing on a cliff, looking down on them. Ash was interested in this Bagon since he had never seen one before and didn't even know what it was, so he scanned it with his Pokedex, which identified it as Bagon, known as the Rock Head Pokemon. And upon hearing this, Ash thought that Bagon's rock head looked extremely cool. Though Max, on the other hand, was concerned about Bagon's hard head, noting that if it used Skull Bash from the height that it was at up on the cliff, its head would squash them like pancakes, leading May to get scared, which made her yell at Max for scaring her. May then took her mind off of Bagon's hard head by wondering why it was so high up, leading Max to suggest that perhaps it was trying to fly. Although May and Brock didn't think this idea made any sense at all, as Bagon would have to be insane to try and fly since it didn't have any wings. And Brock didn't think Bagon would be that insane. Ash and the gang continued to watch as the Bagon sat atop the cliff, and Brock warned that wild Pokemon could attack unexpectedly, and this could be the case with Bagon. And right as Brock said this was confirmed, as Bagon jumps right off the cliff, coming crashing down into Ash and the gang, making them scream, fearing an impact with Bagon's hard head. The reason why Bagon had jumped off the cliff wasn't actually to attack Ash and the gang, it was actually because, just as Max had initially suggested, the Bagon was actually trying to fly, and it got frustrated when it couldn't fly, and began to squirm around as it fell, hoping that it could fly, but it just couldn't. Of course, Ash and the gang thought that the Bagon was purposely trying to attack them, so they ran for their lives, still screaming, so leading Bagon to crash into a nearby rock headfirst, smashing it into pieces, and causing a huge dust cloud, which cleared by the time Ash and the gang looked back to see what had happened to the Bagon, as they saw that it was standing in a determined manner, completely uninjured from crashing into the rock. Making even Max surprised at the fact that Bagon's head was so hard that it could even break rocks, and that it wouldn't hurt itself on rocks. Max then noticed that Bagon looked kind of angry, and even though this was because it had failed to fly, Max thought that this was now because it wanted to fight someone, particularly Ash. So Ash sent out his Taillow to fight it. Yeah, that's right, Max had basically not believed in the flying thing anymore after Brock and Ash and May had convinced him otherwise. Taillow then goes up to the cliff, expecting that Bagon would go back up there, and sure enough, it did, pretty much chasing Taillow up, crawling on all fours. Taillow then goes to fly at Bagon, tackling it, but Ash warned Taillow to get out of the way, as it looked like Bagon was about to jump off the cliff, and if it did, then Taillow would get caught in the jump. So Taillow was able to move away, and sure enough, Bagon dodged as it leaped down from the cliff again, trying to fly, but it realized that it couldn't fly, and simply fell to the ground again, smashing another rock with its head, although it emerged from the dust that followed from the rock's destruction, unharmed yet again. And its head was even shining to boot, because it was basically polished after destroying the rock. And Bagon was still wearing a determined look, determined to continue flying, or at least trying to fly. Anyways, with Bagon back on the ground, Ash commands Taillow to use Wing Attack on it, but before Taillow strikes, a girl very stealthily jumps down from the same cliff that Bagon was on before, from behind Bagon, insinuating that she was probably behind Bagon the entire time. Ash and the gang were startled by her appearance, as she didn't reveal her full face, as she had some high-tech shades on. Ash then questioned who the fuck this woman was, and what she was doing, as the woman then messed around with her high-tech shades, and had them focus on Taillow, exclaiming to the Bagon that she's found the target, and we then see the view from her shades, which showed a bunch of charts and lines focusing in on Taillow, that was basically giving her a whole bunch of data on Taillow and its movements. So she proceeded to somehow relay all this information to the Bagon, telling it the coordinates of Taillow and its current distance away, and the speed of how fast it was coming towards it. She then taps a button on the side of her shades that calculates collision factors. Basically, it told if Taillow was going to be hitting Bagon or not, and the shades confirmed that Taillow would hit Bagon, so the woman precisely told Bagon to move 1 meter to the left, and Bagon did this, efficiently dodging Taillow's attack, as Taillow then goes upward, startled at Bagon's sudden dodge. Ash and the gang were shocked at Bagon's sudden dodge as well, and questioned how the fuck the girl was able to tell when Taillow was going to attack. The girl simply ignores their questions and turns to them, and begins to yell at Ash and the gang for trying to attack and potentially catch her Bagon, stating that catching a trainer's Pokemon was illegal, and attacking a trainer's Pokemon without their consent was just plain rude. She also claimed that the attack was a sneak attack, so that was even worse, though Ash and the gang defended themselves, stating that Bagon actually attacked Ash and the gang first. Though the woman didn't care about this, as she stated that even if her Bagon did attack first, it was still wrong to attack a trainer's Pokemon without their consent, and stated that if Ash and the gang wanted to fight, it was a fight that they would get, as she threatened to attack Ash and the gang with her Bagon. But May then explained that they didn't know that Bagon was owned either, they thought it was wild. And the woman finally understood that Ash and the gang were genuinely innocent after this, and took off her shades to sincerely apologize. When Brock saw the woman's face, and particularly her eyes, that were very pretty according to him, Brock was instantly in love, and started to flirt with her, having literal hearts in his eyes because he was so in love, and he then stated that the woman had no need to apologize, just wanted to get on her good side. Weirded out by Brock's flirting, the woman asked if Brock was alright in the head, and no one answered before Brock simply told the woman his name, and states that he was perfectly fine, though he would only remain fine if the woman would introduce herself. So the woman, not wanting Brock to get any weirder, if that was even possible, introduced herself as Michelle, and Brock complimented the name, stating it was beautiful, and the perfect name for his future lover, which made the woman weirded out even more, as the rest of the gang introduced themselves to her. Suddenly, Tailo began flapping its wings to alert everyone to the fact that Bagon was now on the cliff again, and just jumped. Ash and the gang were concerned that Bagon might get injured from the fall, thinking that maybe it wouldn't land directly on a rock, so it wouldn't be able to break anything to essentially break its fall for it. So they all went to catch Bagon before it fell, while Michelle, on the other hand, was excited to see Bagon jump again, and put her shades back on to measure Bagon's speed, as well as find out its landing coordinates as it fell. Ash tried to rescue Bagon before it hit the ground, but it instead hit a rock first, although since Michelle was able to track Bagon's movements, she was able to meet it by the rock and stand right behind the rock as Bagon bounced off of it when it hit it, landing directly in Michelle's arms. May simply complimented Michelle on the good catch, while Max, on the other hand, was curious as to what her shades could really do, asking about them, leading Michelle to take them off and explain them, detailing that she had specifically programmed the glasses to have an inbuilt computer analysis tool to improve Bagon's accuracy in battle, clarifying that her shades allowed her to communicate with Bagon, as well as to calculate its movements, such as its speed and distance, as well as its falling speed. Max was amazed by this technology, although Brock was a bit confused, questioning why Michelle needed to measure Bagon's falling speed in the first place, leading Michelle to explain that measuring the falling speed when it jumped off the cliff was very important because she had a theory that all Bagon wanted to fly. It was basically their dream. It was a dream across the entire species, clarifying that it was only destroying the rocks because it failed to fly. It didn't have any intention to actually destroy them. Michelle's statement about Bagon wanting to fly would then prove to be true, for sure, as Bagon then looked up at Tailo flying in the air and smiled, indicating that it wanted to be like Tailo. Although Michelle admitted that she knew that it was mostly impossible for just Bagons to fly, as it refused to believe that it couldn't, so it was basically so determined to prove that it could, even though it seemed to be physically impossible for any Bagon to fly. Ash and May respected Bagon's determination, even if it couldn't fly, and admitted that they had always wanted to fly like Tailo as well. When Max heard this, he accused Ash and May of being immature, stating that there was no fucking way for a human to fly, so they should just give it up, and added that he knew that there was no way for a Bagon to fly as well, leading May to tell Max to shut the fuck up, forcing him to, as she put her hand over Max's mouth. Brock, after remembering something from Ash's Pokedex entry that he heard about Bagon, recalled that Bagon evolved into Shelgon before evolving into Salamence, explaining that Salamence had wings. So, therefore, if Bagon could evolve into Salamence, then it could fulfill its dream of flying. Though Brock admitted that he was also confused, as he didn't understand why Bagon was trying to fly right now, when it should, if anything, be trying to fly when it was a Shelgon, since Salamence was the evolved form after Shelgon. Michelle confirmed that Bagon did in fact evolve into Shelgon first, but stated that she was wanting to help Bagon achieve its goal of flying extremely early, so she was trying to get it a whole bunch of extra experience to have it evolve into a Shelgon extremely quick, and then evolve into a Salamence basically very shortly after. Basically, she was just trying to get it as much experience as possible to help it evolve fast, so it could fly. Hearing that Bagon needed as much experience as possible, Ash got excited, claiming that Bagon should battle to gain some experience. Michelle came to the conclusion that Ash was the one who wanted to battle Bagon to help it get experience, and therefore asked Ash if this was the case. Ash confirmed this, challenging Michelle to a battle, which Michelle accepted to give her Bagon more experience. Max was immensely excited for the battle, hoping that Michelle would use the computer program shades during it so that he could analyze them. Meanwhile, behind a rock to the right of Ash and the gang and Michelle, Team Rocket were spying on Ash and the gang with their binoculars, as usual, having overheard Bagon's desire to evolve. James remarked that Bagon's dream was kind of cool, but Jesse argued that Bagon's dream was pathetic, although admitted that it was kind of cute that a little baby Pokemon wanted to fly like its older form. James agreed with Jesse, with both of them basically coming to the conclusion that Bagon would be good as a Shelgon or Salamence, but not as a Bagon. As a Bagon itself, it was pretty fucking lame, but Meowth interjected, thinking that Giovanni would love Bagon, since it would be a lot of use to him, so Meowth suggested that Team Rocket steal Bagon. James wondered how the Bagon would be of use to Giovanni, leading Meowth to have a boss fantasy of Giovanni doing some scouting in a jungle to build a new Team Rocket base, and to avoid the heat, as well as quench his thirst and hunger. Bagon could help out Giovanni while he was looking for the base by helping Giovanni if he managed to find any coconuts that he couldn't open, explaining that Bagon could use its hard head to smash the coconut, and therefore Giovanni would never go hungry or thirsty while looking for the base. Meowth's fantasy then ended, as he added that Giovanni would be so happy to receive Bagon that he would give Team Rocket promotions, and therefore Team Rocket would be able to live a life of constant money and luxury, leading Team Rocket to cheer in happiness as Wobbuffet popped out of its Pokeball, showing that it agreed to capture the Bagon as well. So that was Team Rocket's new plan, as they began to fantasize about ending up in luxurious hot springs due to all the money they would receive. Meanwhile, Max and Nate had taken their seats on a rock to watch the battle between Ash and Mitchell, as Ash and Michelle went on opposite sides of the field, and Brock decided to referee the battle, telling both trainers to send their Pokemon out, and clarifying that the battle would be one-on-one. And of course, Michelle chose her Bagon, while Ash sent out his Pikachu. Max was super excited to see how the battle was going to go, leading May to question why Max was so excited, leading Max to explain that Bagon was a dragon type, which would mean that Pikachu wouldn't be able to do much to it with its electricity, not even because dragon types were good against electric types, but just because dragon types were so strong. And yeah, Max was just looking forward to see how Ash would counter Bagon's dragon type, though admitted that he had doubts that Ash would even be able to. Anyways, right as Brock ordered the match to begin, Ash started off with Pikachu having used Quick Attack, leading Michelle to use her shades to analyze Pikachu's movements, and she was able to see how Pikachu was going to hit Bagon, so she was able to order Bagon to dodge by jumping 30 degrees to the left, and instructed it to be defensive, explaining to Bagon that after moving 30 degrees to the left, it should just make sure to stay put, as it couldn't move any farther without risking being harmed by Pikachu, since Pikachu was able to move fast and could quickly adjust. But if Bagon moved specifically 30 degrees, then Pikachu wouldn't be able to hit it, so long as Bagon went on the defensive, stating that if Pikachu hit it from exactly this 30-degree angle, while Bagon prepped its head so that Pikachu landed straight on its head, then Pikachu would suffer because of this. So basically, Bagon prepared its hard head, and since Pikachu had saw Bagon move 30 degrees, it quickly zigzagged off a rock to position itself with Bagon, but since Bagon's head was prepared, Pikachu's head matched up with Bagon's head, and due to the hardness of Bagon's head, Pikachu fell back, and a shockwave was sent through Pikachu's body from the sheer force of the impact as it was sent flying back, and Pikachu then held its hurt head, as May commented that Bagon's head took the hit like it was nothing, with Max explaining that Bagon's rock head ability made its hard head invulnerable to physical blows. Michelle then does another analysis with her shades on Pikachu this time, and states that Pikachu took 70% of its damage, so it had 30% health left apparently. I don't know how she was able to calculate that, but she also stated that Pikachu's morale was dropping since it was obviously in a worse mood since it was almost knocked out. So Michelle then commanded Bagon to try and finish Pikachu off with a Skull Bash, so Bagon jumped forward as it sped towards Pikachu, leaving Pikachu to run and jump out of the way as fast as possible. This just leads Michelle to order Bagon to change course 45 degrees to the right so that it could just get back on course with Pikachu, and it did by leaping off a rock to go 45 degrees to the right and began running towards Pikachu again. Although Pikachu was able to dodge Bagon's Skull Bash by leaning backwards and therefore getting out of Bagon's way, but Bagon had so much momentum from its fast running that it ended up smashing straight into a rock, destroying it. Despite Pikachu having avoided the Skull Bash and Headbutt from Bagon, it was still terrified upon seeing the rock being destroyed, fearing that something similar could happen to it, and Max was in awe at how powerful the Skull Bash was, with May stating that she didn't even think Pikachu could withstand a hit like that. Ash then has Pikachu use Thunderbolt, but Michelle uses her shades to analyze the Thunderbolt's speed and also its target area, knowing where the Thunderbolt would hit, instructing Bagon to dodge by moving 2 meters to the left, and sure enough, the Thunderbolt missed, with Bagon dodging easily. Michelle then has Bagon try another Skull Bash on Pikachu, and this time, it managed to hit instantly, knocking Pikachu into a nearby rock, leading Ash to rush to Pikachu's side to make sure that Pikachu was okay. While Ash was doing this, Michelle took the opportunity to analyze Pikachu with her shades again, and her shades revealed that Pikachu had taken basically 100% of its damage, concluding that although Pikachu put up a great fight, the match was done. Much to Michelle's shock, though, Pikachu, after some encouraging words from Ash, was able to stand back up and spark immensely, indicating that it was ready for battle still. Michelle curiously stared at Ash and Pikachu, wondering how Pikachu could have done 2 things. 1, survived Bagon's headbutt, which none of her opponents had ever been able to do, and 2, she was amazed at how encouragement could boost Pikachu's morale and increase its health, it seemed like, because Pikachu was on the verge of being knocked out, but when Ash encouraged it, it was able to get stronger. Seeing how Pikachu was sparking like crazy, Ash got the idea to have Pikachu combine both Thunderbolt and Quick Attack by running towards Bagon as fast as it could, while also administering the Thunderbolt. So Pikachu ran forward, sparking immensely. This led Michelle to analyze Thunderbolt's effective shock zone so that she could tell Bagon where to dodge to, but she came to the conclusion that the Thunderbolt was going to be too big to dodge, so she told Bagon that it had to attack back instead, as she instructed Bagon to charge straight into Pikachu at full velocity with another Skull Bash, combined with a tackle and a headbutt. Pikachu and Bagon then collided, causing a massive explosion of dust and electricity, as Pikachu was revealed to have successfully hit Bagon with Thunder, canceling out its headbutt, tackle, and Skull Bash, as Bagon, almost knocked out, fell and skids across the ground, with Max stating that Bagon actually took some damage at the attack, and May adding that even though Pikachu was severely injured, Bagon now was as well, so there was no telling who was going to win. With Bagon down, Michelle tried to use Ash's tactic of encouraging her Pokemon to get back up to boost its morale, and sure enough, this worked, as when Michelle told Bagon that it had to get up, pleading as much as she could, Bagon opened its eyes and got back onto its feet, leading Michelle to command Bagon to try and hit Pikachu again with another Skull Bash, leading Bagon to jump forward. Ash comes up with an idea, as he tells Pikachu to simply wait out the attack, and as the distance between Bagon and Pikachu becomes shorter, right before Bagon was about to strike Pikachu, Michelle wondered what Ash was going to do, as Ash stressed out if the strategy would pay off, but he still used it anyway, as Ash tells it to dodge at the last second to catch Bagon off guard, as Pikachu, sure enough, leaped above Bagon, leading Ash to congratulate it for dodging so quickly, just like when it was training for the rematch against Brawly, stating that even though they had beat Brawly, the training that they had done for that battle still proved useful. As for Bagon, even though it missed Pikachu, it was able to redirect thanks to Michelle's analyzing prowess, and it was able to therefore move away from the rock and not crash into it, and then stood up as it faced Pikachu, who was about to use a Thunderbolt, although Michelle analyzed Pikachu and this incoming Thunderbolt, and instructed Bagon to jump 30 degrees upward to dodge the Thunderbolt, and then, once Bagon had done this, she ordered it to launch a mid-air Skull Bash. Although, before this Skull Bash could land, Ash told Pikachu to use Iron Tail, and Pikachu ran forward, turning itself around in midair to thrust its tail at Bagon's head, striking it. Both Pokemon then land on their feet as they glare at each other, with Ash exclaiming happily that his Iron Tail strategy worked, with Michelle shocked that it worked, but she complimented Ash on using an offensive attack for defense. Ash congratulated Pikachu on doing this as well, as he stated that Pikachu should feel honored that its opponent was complimenting it, when suddenly Michelle reminded Ash that although she did just compliment his Pikachu, the battle was not over, as Bagon had survived the Iron Tail due to how strong its head was. Ash didn't care though, as he knew that Pikachu was doing a great job, and simply said that as long as Pikachu didn't give up, Pikachu could win. But just then, Ash and the gang and Michelle were startled as they heard Jessie's voice telling James to not give up either. She was referring to him driving the helicopter that they were currently in and telling him not to stop. James promises not to, and Ash and the gang and Michelle hear this as well, wondering where the voices were coming from, when they then see Team Rocket's helicopter, the same one from Bye Bye Butterfree, episode 20-1, approach, and Team Rocket then says their motto, which was heard by Ash and the gang and Michelle through the helicopter's loudspeaker. During Team Rocket's motto, the helicopter rises farther up into the air, and James mentioned something about a remote control. Brock was confused, asking what James meant by this, and also confused as to why Team Rocket had momentarily switched up their motto, stating that they had to be up to something different. Jessie states that they weren't really doing something different, since they were just coming to capture Pikachu, as usual. But she then laughs, along with James, as they reveal that there was one thing different from their usual plan, as James and Jessie together pressed a button on the helicopter, which caused a panel to open in the front portion of the helicopter, revealing Meowth with a jetpack attached to his back, who then flew out of the helicopter and went towards Pikachu, leaving Ash to warn Pikachu to watch out. So Pikachu gets ready to dodge Meowth, although it was then revealed that Jessie was actually the one controlling Meowth's jetpack, as she laughs, commenting that Ash and Pikachu had fell for the diversion, tapping a button on the remote control she had that operated the jetpack, which caused Meowth to suddenly swerve direction, and he instead headed directly for Bagon instead of Pikachu grabbing Bagon, making Michelle worried as Meowth flew away with Bagon, who struggled in Meowth's grip, as Meowth went back up to the helicopter. Inside the helicopter, Jessie happily stated that the plan was going great, and suggested that they do all their operations with remote control jetpacks. James agreed, happily flying the helicopter, as Ash took action trying to save Bagon by sending out Trico and telling him to use Bullet Seed, leading Trico to fire the Bullet Seed at Team Rocket's helicopter, causing the helicopter to tilt and shake, and also the remote control to fumble out of Jessie's hands, and somehow out of the helicopter door and onto the ground. And since Jessie wasn't directing Meowth with the controller, this caused Meowth's jetpack to begin flying erratically and spin around before zooming off away into the distance, out of sight from Team Rocket in their helicopter. So James quickly spun around the helicopter and flew the helicopter after Meowth and Bagon, as fast as he could go. Just then, Michelle actually finds the remote control to the jetpack on the ground, and she picks it up, realizing that it must control Meowth's jetpack, as she tries to turn the jetpack around. But she couldn't do this, as she at first came to the conclusion that the controller must have been destroyed from falling, but she soon realized that it probably just needed to be in close range to work, since the lights to the controller were still on. So she explained the situation with the controller to Ash and the gang, and stated that they would have to get closer to where Meowth and Bagon currently were to use the remote control. And so Ash and the gang offered to come with her to get closer to Bagon, wanting to help her retrieve it, and Michelle thanked them for their assistance. Meanwhile, as for Meowth and Bagon, the jetpack continued to move erratically, leading Meowth to order James to find the off switch on the fucking controller, thinking that Jessie was just incompetent and couldn't turn it off, not knowing that Jessie had lost the controller. As Meowth continued to freak out, not wanting to erratically move anymore, Bagon, even though it was still in Meowth's arms, was happy, as it seemed to enjoy the ride, and finally being able to be in the air, as it flapped its arms happily, trying to pretend like it was actually flying in the air. Just then, Jessie and James arrived, appearing ahead of Meowth and Bagon in the helicopter, as James positioned the helicopter, and deployed a huge net which extended from the bottom of the helicopter, leading Jessie to instruct Meowth to fly into it with Bagon, so that Bagon could be captured and Meowth could be spared from the erratic flying. Meowth was flattered to see that Jessie and James had come to save him after all, but as he goes to fly into the net with Bagon, his jetpack goes out of control again and descends into the forest below, causing them to crash through several trees and bushes before slamming face first directly into a tall tree. To be specific, Meowth slammed directly into the tree trunk so hard that it caused Bagon to slip from his hands, meaning that Bagon didn't get hurt by the tree or anything, and it fell deeper into the forest. Meanwhile, back with Ash and the gang and Michelle, they didn't see the direction that Team Rocket's helicopter, or Meowth and Bagon for that matter, had went. But this didn't stop them from searching, as they knew they had to get up close to the Meowth's jetpack for the control to work. So Ash and the gang and Michelle searched the nearby woods for Team Rocket, with Trico leading the way, agilely somersaulting through the forest, jumping from branch to branch with its great acrobatic skills, with Ash and the gang and Michelle following. in an attempt to find Bagon. While Ash and the gang and Michelle ran, with Pikachu between them and Trico, Michelle commended Ash on his well-trained Pokemon, stating that he was a great trainer, referring to, of course, Pikachu, Trico, and Tailo. Ash thanked Michelle for the compliment, though added that all the compliments should go directly to his Pokemon, stating that all he really did was help them a little bit to bring out their full potential. But Brock commented that Ash was being too modest, stating that Ash had worked hard with his Pokemon for a long time to help them master the attacks. He didn't just help them for like a couple seconds. Ash realizes that Brock was right, and tells Michelle that the reason why his Pokemon were able to learn such cool attacks were because both he and his Pokemon were determined to learn it together. So, if they both worked together, then his Pokemon could achieve great things. Michelle then inquires how Ash was able to dodge so well, leading Ash to explain all the training he did leading up to his rematch at the Dewford Gym, stating that he was very determined and he gave his Pokemon lots of encouragement, and that helped him along the way. So, Michelle came to the conclusion that encouragement and determination were keys to incredible strength with your Pokemon and fulfilling your dreams with your Pokemon, realizing that maybe she didn't need her shades to win and could just use what regular trainers used. And she then promised herself that she would never give up on Bagon and trust that it would eventually learn how to fly, stating that she would continue to give it encouragement until it hopefully could evolve, and then fly once evolved. Anyways, when Meowth had run into the tree trunk, he had crashed to the ground, and therefore, he didn't allow Bagon to get away. And shortly after this, Team Rocket arrived in their helicopter, landing it next to Meowth and Bagon. As Jesse and James examined Meowth for any injuries he could have sustained, but Meowth simply explained that much of the damage he took was psychological, due to the traumatic experience of not having any control over where he was going. Just then, Team Rocket noticed Bagon curiously staring happily at the jetpack and poking it, leading James to question Meowth if he knew why Bagon seemed so happy with the jetpack. Bagon then stands on the tip of its toes and flaps its arms, explaining something to Meowth, as Meowth explains to Jesse and James that Bagon had always dreamed of flying and finally was able to see what it was like because of the jetpack. And also added that he wanted to use the jetpack again to fly once again. Meowth was moved by Bagon's dream, while Jesse and James were just annoyed by the Bagon, stating that it should just give the fuck up, and they stated that it was too pathetic to fly, stating that it was impossible for a Pokemon like Bagon to, and added that they couldn't even make it fly with the jetpack, since, as James joked, it wasn't even a remote possibility, emphasizing the fact that they didn't have the remote anymore. Meowth was angry at how rude James and Jesse were being to the Bagon, and was also fed up with James for even having the gall to mention the remote, stating that he never wanted to hear anything about remotes that James had made ever again, before scratching him with his claws, making James hold his face in pain as he admits that Meowth had a point, stating that he would never mention his remote controls again, though he obviously would. He was just trying to get on Meowth's good side. Anyways, although Meowth was pleased with James admitting that he was in the wrong, Meowth was in a bit of pain due to how hard he scratched, and he rubbed his claws to take away the pain on them, before reminding Jesse and James that a Pokemon could achieve any dream they wanted, including flight, if they put their mind to it enough, referencing the fact how he practiced human speech, and he managed to learn it. Jessie then admitted that she had fallen asleep the first time that Meowth had explained the story of how he talked like a human, and requested that Meowth repeat himself, leading Meowth to give this whole retelling of the story that we already saw back in the original series, of how he learned to talk human language. Anyways, upon declaring that he achieved his dream of talking like a human, he stated that other Pokemon shouldn't give up on their dreams either, as he cheerfully went over to Bagon and encouraged it to achieve its dream of flying and never to give up on it, as Bagon then tried to fly by jumping into the air and flapping its arms, although it obviously couldn't fly yet. Bagon then remembers that it could use Team Rocket's jetpack, although Meowth stops him, telling him that he should achieve his dream of flying the natural way, and warns him to not rely on the jetpack, explaining that he had relied on James' jetpack, and that obviously got him in a bad position. James heard this, and he sighed in annoyance, as Meowth made up a story that he wanted to learn how to fly and soar across the cities and world as well, which was why he was on the jetpack, basically trying to hide the fact that he initially tried to capture the Bagon, so that Bagon would take him seriously in terms of advice not to give up on his dream. Jesse, James, and Wobbuffet then slump over in despair, with Jesse questioning if she had really just heard Meowth encourage a Pokemon with something positive. James confirmed this and sighed in annoyance with Jesse when Meowth told Bagon that as long as it worked hard, it should never give up, and it would eventually achieve its goals. This just made Jesse and James even more annoyed at the fact that a member of Team Rocket was praising the virtues of hard work, and just encouraging them on in general. However, Meowth cheers Jesse and James up as he reveals that although he did want Bagon to achieve his dreams, he was only encouraging him so much for the benefit of Team Rocket, stating that if they were going to give a Bagon to Giovanni, which Meowth planned to do, then giving a flying Bagon was more valuable than a regular Bagon, since no Bagons could fly, and Meowth then began to have a boss fantasy of giving Giovanni a flying Bagon, as Jesse and James had this fantasy as well. The fantasy involved Giovanni flying in a private jet and suddenly realizing that he was thirsty and hungry, so he therefore wanted some coconut water, but he couldn't get the coconut open since he didn't have a bag on with him. Well, he wouldn't have a bag on with him by his private jet only if the Bagon couldn't fly, clarifying that if Bagon could fly, then it could come to his private jet and open up his coconut with its hard head for him, and also stated that therefore Giovanni would be so pleased with Jesse and James and Meowth for giving him a flying Bagon that he would give them all massive promotions, which intrigued Jesse and James, hoping that the Bagon could actually fly now, so that they could get these promotions. However, just as Jesse, James, and Meowth were fantasizing over all the luxurious things they could get when they were promoted, such as a private yacht, as Meowth held up a small wooden boat in comparison, when just then, Trico had managed to lead Ash and the gang and Michelle to Team Rocket, as Ash happily shouts that Team Rocket had been found, and Michelle demands Team Rocket to return her Bagon, leading Team Rocket to simply taunt her and Ash and the gang as they laugh. Ash knew that Team Rocket couldn't be reasoned with, as usual, so he tells Pikachu to use Quick Attack, and Pikachu obliges, rushing into Team Rocket, knocking them directly into their helicopter. So now, only Bagon was left on the ground, and this meant that Michelle could happily reunite with it and ask if it was okay. However, when she did this, she noticed that Bagon was now holding the jetpack in its hands and tried to give it to Michelle as a gift, wanting her to see its amazingness. Michelle didn't care about the jetpack right now, only Bagon's safety, so she asked once again if it was okay, or if Team Rocket heard it, but thankfully Bagon assured her this time that Team Rocket didn't hurt it. Michelle was very happy to have her Bagon back, and Ash and the gang were happy for Michelle, as they all celebrated, thinking that Team Rocket was dealt with, since they were knocked into their helicopter, when suddenly it was revealed that Team Rocket had went back inside their helicopter, and suddenly the helicopter's blades began spinning, as James activated a claw from the helicopter and used it to grab Pikachu, and then Team Rocket flew off with him. Upon seeing this, Ash began to get worried that Team Rocket may actually take Pikachu this time, as he ordered them to stop their helicopter. Although Team Rocket obviously refused, or they just didn't hear him, but thankfully, Bagon then spoke out to get everyone's attention, as they all looked to it and saw that the jetpack was now around Bagon's back, and Max came to the conclusion that Bagon wanted to help get Pikachu back by following after Team Rocket, and Bagon confirmed this. Though, before it could take off on the jetpack, Trico leaped onto Bagon's back, also wanting to go after Team Rocket and wanting to save Pikachu. Although, Michelle then stopped Bagon and Trico from going up in the jetpack, stating that she was concerned that she wouldn't be able to use the control properly, and therefore the jetpack would go out of control. But Ash just assured her that she would do fine using the controls, stating that he could always give her a crash course. So Michelle was convinced by this and gave a nod of approval to Trico and Bagon, as Trico and Bagon took off in the jetpack, but not before putting on her shades and using them to analyze Bagon and Trico's potential movements in the air, as well as the helicopter's speed and distance. Once Michelle had informed Bagon of the helicopter's speed and how far away it was, she then wished Bagon and Trico good luck and told them to prepare themselves, as she used the remote control to launch Bagon and Trico into the sky with the jetpack. Once Trico and Bagon had reached the air, Bagon happily looked at the view as they approached Team Rocket's helicopter, very excited to be up in the air once again. While this was going on inside the helicopter, Pikachu was trying to free itself from a cage that it had been put in. But Meowth just laughed as Pikachu used Thunderbolt to do this, exclaiming that it would never escape because the cage was electric-proof. Just then, James happened to look out the window and informed Jesse and Meowth that it appeared that they had some company, and this company was, of course, Bagon and Trico. And soon enough, Bagon and Trico swerved towards Team Rocket's helicopter, using the jetpack, and fly directly through the helicopter front window, leading into the cockpit where Team Rocket was, making Meowth freak out. And Meowth gets even more freaked out, as Bagon flies right through the cockpit. But that was after dropping Trico off inside the helicopter, leading Trico to then jump up to the top on the roof of the helicopter. This makes Jessie mad, because, the helicopter window was now broken, and she becomes determined to take out Trico, as she sends out her Survivor to do so. Unfortunately, though, Survivor was too big and long for the helicopter, as its head bumped into the ceiling, and its length made the helicopter cramped, squishing Team Rocket. James then feels the helicopter shake, and he hears a knocking sound, and he looks out to see Bagon headbutting the front of the helicopter from outside, still using the jetpack to stay up in the air. To make matters worse for Team Rocket, Trico, who was still inside the helicopter, used Bullet Seed, and all of the seeds ricocheted off the helicopter walls, causing several mini explosions in the helicopter, making it tilt. And then one of the Bullet Seeds happens to hit the lock on Pikachu's cage, allowing Pikachu to go free. And so, with Pikachu free, Bagon was able to get over to where Pikachu and Trico were, or at least a place outside of the helicopter by them, so that Pikachu and Trico were able to jump out of the helicopter onto Bagon's back. Still inside the helicopter, Jesse and Meowth were angry at James, ordering him to actually be a good pilot and fly the helicopter as best he could, noticing that it was tilting and falling to the ground, but James couldn't do anything before Pikachu used Thunderbolt to send Team Rocket blasting off, exploding their helicopter. Although Pikachu had to jump off Bagon to land this attack, it quickly jumped back on, and Bagon took Trico and Pikachu on some loops around the sky, leading Ash and the gang to look up, having found Bagon with Michelle, and they see how it had technically fulfilled its dream of flying in the air thanks to the jetpack, and Michelle, along with Ash and the gang, were thrilled to see this. Bagon continues to fly for hours as Ash and the gang and Michelle watch, and eventually it lands, even though it was really enjoying the flight, along with Pikachu and Trico, leading Ash to suggest that he and Michelle resume their battle so that Bagon could evolve. But Michelle responded that there was now no reason to battle, as Bagon had already achieved its ultimate goal of flying and could just continue to use the jetpack. Michelle then asks Bagon how it liked its first flight, and Bagon happily nods. And basically, Bagon and Michelle happily talk about Bagon achieving its dream of flying and shit, and Michelle congratulates it and admits that she was glad that Bagon had started to fly now, since it felt like she finally had purpose, and her purpose was fulfilled as well, since she had dedicated so long to making Bagon fly, and now it had. Just then, Ash and the gang watch in awe as Bagon starts glowing and evolves into Shelgon, and in the process, the jetpack slips off, because Shelgon didn't fit with the jetpack anymore, shocking Ash and the gang. Michelle was amazed by this, thinking Shelgon looked awesome, as she happily hugs it and congratulates it on never giving up on its dream, and states that it was now one step closer to being able to become a salamence and fly without a jetpack, adding that it would have to now, since it was too big for the jetpack. And so with that, Michelle and Shelgon still had a dream of flying naturally. The episode then ends with Max bringing everyone's attention to a flock of Pidgeotto flying overhead, leading Brock to comment that the Pidgeotto were the perfect symbol for Shelgon's dream of flying one day with its own wings, and Ash and the gang observed the Pidgeotto happily, hoping that Shelgon would soon be able to join in the air with them. Ash and the gang then say goodbye to Michelle and her Shelgon as they continue on their journey to Fall Arbor City.